we'd go to each other's houses and knock on the door and say, "Hey, is Dan home? Is Justin home? Like, can you come outside and play?" And like people would just randomly come to my house and knock on the door and ask if I was home. Like that doesn't happen anymore.
No.
Hey, welcome to the Chris James podcast. Today we have Brian Wiesner, who's an online creator. He writes on Substack and makes videos on YouTube. He's also an expat living in Barcelona, Spain. So we talk about how to forge community and what it's like to get up and move to a different country. So without further ado, let's get into it. And if you enjoy this convo, hit that subscribe button.
I'm still burning cash every month, but I have a pretty solid runway because like what I think is like, we're kind of in a bit of a slow economy, like a recession right now. And I think we're going to come out of that, and I think AI is going to take off. So I think like late 2020s we're in for like a pretty solid bull run of like wealth creation from AI, which would be nice. And I have enough like cash, I think, to get me to that point where I think the economy will be like popping off again. Hopefully, like my books will be making some money. So yeah, I'm in like a season of my life where I'm trying to like lean into art mode to like create something great while I have this runway.
That's awesome, man. That's really awesome.
So you're in Barcelona right now. It's funny, like 5 people in the last week have told me about Barcelona, and I'm like wondering what the hell is so good about Barcelona.
What did they tell you about it?
Well, Paul, our mutual friend, said that he's thinking about moving there, and he checked it out. And someone else in our Pathless Path group, Emily, she's new. She was telling me about it. She goes there every summer. And my mom's friend is going there. So people just tell me they're going there. Why are they
But you
going
don't
there,
know
Brian?
anything about it.
No, I really don't.
I mean, they're coming here because I think it's one of the most popular, visited cities in Spain, especially during the summertime. Like we have year-round good weather. There's a lot of diverse activities of things to do. Like you can go to the beach or you can go on a hike in the mountains on the same day. So it's a really compact city too. So it's not spread out like sometimes I compare it to other major cities like London or Paris or Los Angeles, for example, is an example of a city that's really, really spread out. But Barcelona is more compact. So it's really walkable or bikeable as well. That's kind of why I chose to live here. And also it's really affordable compared to a lot of other major European cities. Like the price of just going out for a dinner or hotels and things like that. Like I went to London a few months ago and I couldn't even stay in London city center because it was so expensive. I mean, I could have, but I just didn't want to pay that much money. But here in Barcelona, you're not going to pay that much money as you would as some of the other big European cities. So I think weather, affordability, and just activities and things to do, it really checks all the boxes.
And you've been living there for 5 years?
5 years.
How did you make friends when you moved there? I assume you
Great
like went there
question.
by yourself.
Yeah. So that's a good question. I like talking about that. So when I first moved here, I joined a co-working space. Shout out to One Cowork. They have 3 or 4 locations here in the city, and I worked out a deal with their social media marketing manager to take photos of the space. So I was kind of getting into photography. I wouldn't consider myself like a professional or anything. I just had a nice camera and knew how to take pictures. And so I talked to the social media manager. He actually reached out to me through Instagram because he saw one of my photos and set up a meeting with him. And I offered to take photos for them if they just gave me access to the space. So it was awesome because I got to know all the clients, like all the people who were using it as a co-working space, plus all the people who were actually part of the staff of the co-working space. So at all the locations. So it was just like an immediate, it was just because, if you get a membership at one of them, you typically have to stay at that one. I think WeWork is different. You can bounce around to all of them, but at this one, you have to stay at the one you sign up at. but I was able to bounce between all 4 of them. So I grew my social circle or my network pretty fast. And then also taking Spanish classes. So I signed up for Spanish classes at a local school and met some friends through that. And yeah, basically through the co-working space and my Spanish class, it just grew naturally.
Through the co-working spaces. Cool. Yeah, I have a co-working space here in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I've made a few friends from that, but like nobody that I've like hung out with outside of that. Um, but I assume that your co-working space was like larger. And when did you move there? Like, how old were you?
So I was 28 when I moved here, and you got to remember, I mean, it's a big city, it's a big nomad hub. So at the co-working space, you have people from all over, uh, from the US, from all over Europe.
Nice.
So it's a wide variety of people, and all kind of in that age range of early 20s to mid 30s, most of the people. So it was just a really uh, good crowd of people to meet with. Oh, and the co-working space was also just so it facilitated things. It facilitated meetings between people in the sense that every Thursday they had something called Afterworks where they provided free beer and wine, so everyone would just hang out in the common area and talk to each other. So that was a big help in meeting people. And then the way it works is, I think this applies to like a lot of life. You just need to meet. A lot of times you meet certain people, and certain people are super connectors. And when you meet a super connector, a person that's friends with a wide variety of people or a lot of different groups of people, those super connectors can connect you to other people that are not in your immediate friend circle. So once you meet a couple of those people, they invite you to something. And I think I heard this advice from someone, I cannot tell you who it was, but when you move to a new city, say yes to everything. Say yes to every person that invites you to, because when you say you're new to a city, typically people will invite you to stuff because they know you don't have
Right.
friends. So just say yes to everything, because if you're new to a city and you just met somebody and they know you're new and they invite you to something and you say no, they're probably not going to ask you again
That's
because you
true.
denied them the first time. So if you say yes to everything just for that first month, you're going to meet, or for the first like 3 months, you're going to meet a shit ton of people.
Yeah, yeah, that's 100% a good point. Uh, what are third places?
Oh, great question, man. That is a topic I'm diving so deep into right now. Um, so the first place is I feel like it's getting a lot. I don't know. I've seen it popping up a lot on social media and like on YouTube and stuff now, but I think it's just because I've been searching it so much. So maybe that's just the algorithm like pushing that kind of stuff towards me. But so the first place is your work. Sorry, first place is your home. Second place is your work, and third place is anything in between. So in 1989, this sociologist, this guy Ray Oldenburg, he published this book called The Great Good Place, and he talked about how, this is back in the 80s, he talked about how public places, just places people can go and hang out, like, think like a cafe or a library, um, a park, a town square, like all of those were just in decline throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, because life in America started to become more privatized when we started building the suburbs and people went into these single family homes. Uh, People just wanted to be at home with their nuclear families, and so that sense of socializing kind of started to decline. And there's actually been this epidemic of loneliness that people have been reported feeling lonely. I know you probably don't get that because you're like a super social person, but like there's just been a decline in the amount of places where we can go and enjoy ourselves and meet other people in our community at little to no cost. Like most places you go to, they expect you to spend your money there, like there's
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Um, but on that topic, like, I am a social person, but nonetheless, like, I have felt lonely at many times in my life because I don't do employment, and employment is where like a lot of socialization happens. Like, if you just work from home, like me, uh, that like limit, especially in America, if you work from home in America and you don't like have a partner or a friend group, dude, it can get
Bro,
lonely.
ever since remote work started, the first and second place have blended into one now for a lot of people. So now that's why third places are even more important than ever. It's like I have multiple third places. I walk outside of my apartment and there's 3 different coffee shops I go to. There's a library here in my neighborhood. There is this restaurant called Honest Greens that has like healthy food, but you can also go there with your laptop and work. And I always meet friends there. There's just a lot of places you can go where it's not like a fancy dive bar with $15 cocktails. You know what I mean? Like when I think of third places in the US, that's what I think of. Just like these upscale places or these chic places that are trying to attract customers. As opposed to here, you can find like these places where you buy a coffee for like a couple bucks and then you could spend hours there.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a cafe that I was just at in Manchester. It's $1.75 for a coffee, and
Nice.
you can hang out there. And I just met someone there today.
Nice.
So you do have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit to approach someone new. Like it's difficult, but it's not impossible. And I've gotten better at that over the years. Like I can do cold approach, um, which is
You
cool. I
talking
mean,
about
that's
with
like
guys and girls?
what's
Are you
that?
saying with guys or girls?
Both. I mean, I'm my preference is girls, but I'm um but yeah, no, just like talking to people, especially just random people in public, I think it is a learned skill and perhaps it's atrophying among the younger generation who's primarily using technology or I think it's really when you grow up with it like from day one. I think that's pretty hard, and I think I just like because I was born in 1998. I'm
Mm,
26 years old, so I got a little bit of that in my childhood where we didn't have phones, we didn't have very much social media at all. We'd go to each other's houses and knock on the door and say, "Hey, is Dan home? Is Justin home? Like, can you come outside and play?" And like people would just randomly come to my house and knock on the door and ask if I was home. Like that doesn't happen anymore.
no,
you
no.
know,
No, you're literally right on the cusp too. You're like just barely that
literally,
that
yeah.
that that time, you know? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
1998 is like considered when the internet really became mainstream and started to take off. Um, so I genuinely want to spend more time offline, just totally disconnected. Like, but when you disconnect from the internet by yourself, it can be very lonely because like a lot of my social interaction is through social media, it's through Zoom, it's through phone calls. Um, So what I've done in the past and what I want to do more of in the future is like getting a group together to all disconnect at the same time and we're like in a place and historically for me that's been like wilderness trips where we go on backpacking trips, we're off the grid and if you do that after like 2 or 3 days like you feel like a different person when you're totally disconnected from staring at screens and you're just really with people like there's a shift that happens that I totally want more of so I'm kind of like, I have that on the back of my mind as I go about my life with like 6 to 7 hours of screen time every day. I don't forget the mission, which is like create more of those weeks where I have zero screen time.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you have, I know you mentioned that coffee shop you went to today, but do you have like a place you go to regularly where you do see those familiar faces? Or a place that you can go to where you can schedule kind of like more regular meetups with people who that could become like your guys' like third place where you guys meet, I don't know, once a week, once a month as a group?
Yeah, yeah. One big thing comes to mind is that my friend and my roommate, he's Catholic, and he's when he moved here, and moved in with me, he joined a bunch of Catholic churches and started going to their Bible studies and like their events that they host. And he kind of pulled me into that, and I actually think it's great. I think that the churches that I've like been a part of select for like pretty great people, like pretty high quality people. And um I personally, I don't go to the mass every Sunday. I might go to it for like the last 20 minutes of the mass, and then afterwards, people will get together and go out to lunch after that. And so that's been great. And then Bible study is you're not like sitting there like studying the Bible. It's like a bunch of people like sitting around just talking. So
Yeah.
that's like been a pretty solid like experience for me to just like sit in like a big group of like 20 people who are all in their 20s and 30s, and we're just hanging out talking. Like you don't really get that a lot, at least in America. Um, and then there's a men's group that's like rooted in Christianity that meets every Thursday night. So I think that religion is making a comeback, at least in my kind of online social circle. Like I know like multiple people who are like reading the Bible right now, people who are going to church when they hadn't before, because I think like we've bottomed out in terms of like loneliness, and like people are like, okay, what are we doing here? We need solutions. I think people like, especially younger generation, like they're not super stoked on like the techno corporatist atheist life. Like they're experimenting with other ways of living.
Community.
Yeah, I think that like really the role of religion is to cultivate an emotional experience and to cultivate a community. And I think it's a mistake to ignore that aspect.
Dude, 1000%. I don't care if you believe in Buddha or Jesus or Allah or whoever it is, like I don't care. Like I always thought that it's so funny that your religion is so dependent on where you were born. Like that's literally just where you're just it's the lottery of birth, like okay, so where you were born that defines what religion you are. Um like that's why I think there was that kind of like popular time where atheism was a thing, because it just religion, like if you look at it at a high level, it just doesn't make sense. But really the purpose of it is just to bring us together, and to, like, if you look at most religions, it's just like, how do we help each other? How do we help each other advance as society? You know,
Yeah.
how do we care for one another? Um, like if you read all the main rules of most religions, you'll see that like more or less they follow the same patterns.
Yeah, yeah, they
Do
do.
good and good will come back to you.
Right. And I think generally, like, music is involved, prayer is involved, reading is
Yeah.
involved, fasting is involved. Like, it's so funny how like all these things have been around for thousands of years, and like you see kind of like the atheist like tech bros are like, oh, like we're fasting, now we're doing meditation, now we're doing music. It's like, yeah, dude, like that's what the religion was for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what
That's funny.
like I'm curious, like I was raised atheist and never went to church. I started becoming interested in Christianity just a few years ago. I like when I was I was at a friend's uncle's house, and they were Mormons, and we did like a prayer before we ate, and it was just like a mindfulness exercise like before eating a big meal together, and I was like, wow, like this is really nice. Like I want to like learn more about um, Christianity. So I went to like a local church, and there was like a band, and they played songs and everyone was singing along. And I was like, this is so fun. This is like available for free every week. I was like, okay, I have even more to learn. So I started going to different churches and like seeing the different flavors of Christianity. I'm like, there's a lot to learn here. I like cracked open the Bible, and like I thought it was all nonsense. I was literally told that, oh, it's like all like bullshit from thousands of years ago. And I'm like, actually, like there's some pretty good lines in this. Like, so I'm still learning. I'm actually watching a TV show about the life of Jesus, which you would think like sucks, but it's actually a pretty good show. It's called The Chosen, and it's just like it's nice. It feels like wholesome. And anyways, I'm curious, like, have you learned anything or received anything like from Christianity or another religion? You can say no.
No, I'm trying to think. I mean, Wow, man, I'm stumped. That's a great question. Like I said before, I just feel like they're all trying to get the same point across, of how can we help our neighbors and the people around us. That's kind of just the central theme that I've been able to pull out of all of them. I think from the Buddha, I think the Buddha has 4 teachings, if I'm not mistaken.
Are you looking them up right now?
I am. I remember there was one of them that really 4 noble truths. That's what it is. 4 noble truths. The truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the end of suffering, and the truth of the path that leads to the end of suffering.
Interesting.
So basically
I
life
think
is suffering. Life is suffering. That's what it is. That's once you understand that, life becomes so much easier.
yeah, it is a little ironic, but I don't necessarily think that's true. Like, I don't actually really agree with Buddhism. I think that Buddhism talks about like desire is the source of suffering.
Mm, yeah,
I'm just like not really sure that's true. Perhaps there's like unhealthy desires that can cause suffering, but like I like my desires, you know.
for sure.
um,
You just got to make sure that they don't control your life,
yeah, yeah, like perhaps like too many desires, or getting attached to your desires too
Exactly.
much. Um, so in terms of like community, would you say you're like you have more of an in-person community, or more of an online community, or both?
Man, I think it's super healthy to have a mix of both. And just to kind of loop the third places thing back into this question as well, like this is why third places are important because we need to have we need to have variety. Like we need to have intimate relationships and acquaintances. I think we should have IRL friends and online friends, Like it's cool, man. Like I never met you in real life before, but I've learned a lot from you. Always enjoyed our calls together. And I hope you feel the same about me. And but then I got all my homies here in Barcelona that I love hanging out with too. And now I love all of them for separate reasons. And I know that because we all live here in the same geographical location that we we share a special bond together. And I know that they can help me in ways that you couldn't help me because you're not physically here, right? But then there's ways that you can help me that they can't help me. So I think it's important to have a mix of both. And again, same with like those intimate relationships and those what I call weak ties. So a lot of times in third places, that's what we encounter. We encounter these weak ties, these people that we don't really know that well, but people that a lot of times there's actually studies that a lot of times we get job opportunities and other things in life through our weak ties because they're connected to different circles than we're connected to. Sometimes our friend groups can be like an echo chamber because we all think the same, we all consume the same stuff. That's why we're friends because we share similar values. But in third places, you encounter these people who are not in your immediate friend circle. Maybe they don't. Maybe they work in a different career or a different industry. Maybe they were born in a different generation. It's just more variety. And those weak ties a lot of times can unlock a lot of things for us that our intimate friendships can't unlock.
Yeah, 100%. I think that yeah, you need both those close friends, and then but don't get like locked in a friend group, like
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of people out there. It's good to go somewhere where you don't know anybody. And for me, like I've met so many people online, and frankly, I wish I leaned into that earlier
Mm.
because Like I only started really 1 year ago, like leaning into the online communities, leaning into Zoom calling, joining Zoom calls like for like networking. And that's been like tremendously valuable for both my work and also I've met some of these people in real life and I have a good feeling that we'll meet up in real life at some point in the future. So I love the internet as a tool for bringing people together in the long run. And I mean, it's just like your the pool of people that you have access to is just vastly larger if you have the skill of using the internet, reaching out to people. First of all, share online, find the people who are like-minded, DM people, just say, "Hey, I really liked your post. Like, thanks for sharing."
Mhm.
And then send them your Calendly link. Calendly for me was like the real game changer because then you can actually connect on Zoom and have a conversation. And I mean, it's been a game changer. I'm now part of like 3 circle groups. I join Zoom calls every week, and I'd say it's like at least half my socialization comes from social media and Zoom calls.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say I'm part of one, two. I'm part of like 4 or 5 different online. Okay, so here's this big shift. Yeah, here's this big shift I've seen in the online space. Which, if you've been playing around in these kind of different circles online for about a year now, I don't know if you experienced this, but I first started joining online communities about 4 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago, and I remember everyone had these high ticket coaching offers, like $10,000 to $15,000 to join their communities. And then like those
Wow.
just started to, I mean, there's still these high level mastermind communities that cost, that are high ticket. But in the past year, I've seen such a rise in low ticket communities of subscriptions anywhere from $10 a month to, you know, $50 a month. That's on the high end. I mean, for all my group subscriptions, I pay between 10 to $20 a month. And so I'm part of like 5 or 6, 4 or 5 different groups, where you have all awesome people just sharing things that are working for them, sharing ideas and tools and tactics that are working for them.
Right. It seems like social media is trending in that direction of paid is better. Like paying for social media is just worth the money, like totally. Because like you said, you're usually only paying like for Twitter, it's only $8 a month. And that's kind of like a bigger one. But for like private communities, yeah, it's in my experience, yeah, it's like $10, maybe $20 a month, sometimes even less. Like I saw one, it was $50 a year, and I joined and I made friends through there. And yeah,
What was
like
it?
it was called Nest Labs.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, she's pretty solid. And Paul Millard gave me like a lifetime subscription for like $100 to Pathless Path. So it's very cheap, but just paying a little bit of money, all of a sudden like it shuts out like all the kind of like unserious people or like the lurkers, the bots, the trolls. It just like shuts out all the bullshit and you only get people who are like genuinely interested in like sharing and connecting.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so on that point, you brought up coaching for a second there, and like that's something that I like was resistant to doing. Like I was like, I don't need help. I don't need a
Mm.
therapist. I don't need a coach. Like I'm good. I don't need anybody. But I was wrong. Actually, it's very useful to have coaches and mentors and people helping you. Um, and so someone introduced me to a coach and it was great. Like he helped me a lot. I learned a lot and we ended up hanging out in real life. We ended up doing a podcast together. That's what got me into podcasting. And it was like, wow, like yes, it's not cheap to have a personal coach, but if you can find a good one, it's totally worth the money, I think. And I wish I had done that earlier in my life, but it's still early in my life, so that's good.
Yeah, man, you are, I think for your age, I think you're doing a great job. Like you're 26.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I started listening. That's how old I was when I started listening to like Tim Ferriss podcasts and reading the 4 Hour Work Week, you know? Um, those were kind of like the things that opened my eyes into, okay, I just graduated college. Now I have to make money and survive in the real world. I don't want to work a corporate job. What other paths are there? How else can I make money other than trading my soul for a lifeless job where I have to drive every single
Well,
day to a place I don't want to go to?
dude, shout out to you for bringing that up and asking the question and saying, okay, what are the other options? Because I think people fall into the trap of thinking that is the only option. You have to work a full-time job that you dislike, and people just like accept that as the only thing that's on the table. It's like, no, actually, there's like other ways of living.
I mean I did it. It's not like I just went straight into the whole online world. I did it for 3 years. And I saved up money. And during that time I was just like, okay, I need to figure out a way out of here. Like I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I remember there was one thing that really triggered me that I'll share with you is that I called my dad one day when I was driving home from work, and he asked me, I was complaining to him about the job and I told him I didn't like it. And he asked me, would you be happy if you got a promotion tomorrow? So, you know, kind of putting the future situation of what my life could be like 2 or 3 years down the road. And I was thinking, I immediately thought of my boss, and I was just like, no, I do not want his job at all. That seems
Yeah,
miserable. uh, and
yeah,
so, yeah, I just started. And prior to that job was when I had taken this trip to Barcelona. So I had just come here for a Euro trip, and I had this feeling that like, okay, I need to go back to that city for some reason. So yeah, it was basically working that job for a few years made me realize that, okay, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. And that was the first time I think I maybe questioned, you know, society and like, okay, do we need to follow the default path that society tells us to, or is there other ways?
yeah. There's other ways, and it's never like clear and obvious what that other way is. So you have to have some uncertainty there. So
Mm.
there was a lot of uncertainty in moving to Barcelona and just figuring it out. Um, and humans don't like uncertainty, right? I think this is like the primary reason why people do full-time employment in a job that they don't really like, but it pays them enough, like because they don't like uncertainty. For example, my roommate, he has a
Have you
job
heard
that
the
he doesn't
quote?
like.
Have you heard the quote around that? There's a quote that says people will choose unhappiness over uncertainty all the time.
100%, yeah. Like my roommate has a job he doesn't like, and but he doesn't know what to do. Like if he doesn't have to go to work, he's just really not sure what to do with his time. So he complains about working too much, but he's always like bringing his laptop home, working on weekends and stuff because uncertainty is like scarier than a job that you don't like. So a lot of people opt for that, and sometimes I have like feelings of awkward, kind of like feelings of guilt, or like because I'm not working employment right now. I'm really not like suffering that much right now, and I almost feel like I have this script in my head that's saying that like if I'm not suffering, I'm not working, or like I should be going to a full time job like these other people. I kind of feel like I'm like an outsider a little bit, and also humans don't like to feel like outsiders. But I'm not the only one. I mean, there's a lot of pathless pathers out there. I think we need a better word for them.
Why do you think we need a better word?
I mean, pathless pathers is two words, and it'd be nice. It'd be nice if it was one word. Like I suppose I could say
Wanderers,
freelancers, wanderers. Yeah, freelancers, wanderers, kind of
nomads,
independents, nomads, digital nomads.
vagabonds. Have you ever heard of that one? No, but vagabond just kind of means long-term
I
travel.
suppose there's many words, and they all kind of fall under that. They fall under the umbrella of pathless pathers.
Yeah.
Why don't we take a quick break? All right, walk me through a day in the life of Brian in Barcelona, workday and or non-workday.
Another great question. Okay, so I try to add in a little bit of spontaneity to every day in the sense that I have the same habits and rituals, but I change them up in little ways throughout the week. So to break that down, in the morning is typically when I have the most creative energy. So I'll either stay at home and work from home in the morning and just make coffee here, or I'll go to a coffee shop and write from there and do some work from there. But first thing before I jump into work is I always go downstairs just to get some fresh air, and I walk outside and I do some breath work. So during COVID is kind of when I started getting into Wim Hof style breath work and just all other different types of breath work and going down that rabbit hole. And I actually went to a retreat with Wim Hof here in Spain, which was awesome. Got to meet some great people through that as well. And so yeah, I'll start the morning off with some breath work to just wake myself up, and then I'll jump into whatever creative thing I want to focus on that day, and then I'll try to get a workout in, usually between 1 or 2, and then right around 2 p.m. my time is 8 a.m. EST. So that's typically when my Slack starts blowing up. And I start getting client requests and Zoom calls and everything like that. So pretty much from like 2 till 8-ish. So for that 6 hours, I usually work from home because I'm on Zoom calls. But then again, sometimes I'll just block my calendar off and I'll go to a coffee shop or a different kind of like public place to work just to be outside of my house. So basically, morning is creative activities, and then afternoon is doing client work, making money, and then the evening is like a little wind down session. I always go for a walk in the evening too. So yeah, multiple times throughout the day, just trying to move my body around because I know how important movement is. That's a big thing that I try to incorporate in my day to day, like biking, walking, stretching. Those are some of my non-negotiables throughout the day.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny how similar my schedule is. It's a loose schedule, but generally like the architecture is the same as yours, where the morning is really for me, that's my go outside time, that's my writing time, that's my stretching time. That's where I start to like think about what I'm going to do for the day. And then in the afternoon, I do some work like whatever. And then in the evening, I really like to get outside again and go on another walk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, walking at night has like been pretty nice for me recently. And I'm curious like to learn more about this Wim Hof stuff because I actually went to a Wim Hof event last year. Wim wasn't there, but he couldn't like leave his country for some reason. Something to do with the vaccine, and then but we had a powerful breathwork experience as well as the cold plunges within the group. It was like really fun. And I'm wondering, like you said, you go outside and then you do the breath work outside. Was that
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, there's just something about, I don't know, don't you feel a difference when you walk outside of your house versus being inside?
Yeah, dude, for sure, for sure. It's just more free. It's more open. It's like you're in the world. You're not just in
Yeah.
like a box, uh,
Yeah,
and
I don't know.
you're in
Yeah,
nature.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to live like right next to the ocean. So that's another kind of motivator for going downstairs is I can just like be right on the beach while I'm doing some breath work or some meditation. But yeah, I think just getting outside and moving your body first thing in the morning, that's another reason I do it. So the combination of being outside, being in nature, getting that fresh air, but then also just moving your body a little bit instead of just like getting out of bed and then plopping down on the couch and doing some breath work. I think there's a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah, that's cool. I really haven't considered that. like a lot of times in the mornings, like I'll stay in my room to do
Mm.
my workout, my stretching. Sometimes I'll go outside a little bit, but most days I'm just hanging out in my bedroom in the morning. So there is a park very close to me where I could just go do my stuff like at the local park. But you know how it is in America, like there's just not a lot of people like at the parks. Like there's not a lot of people walking around outside. So like I would guarantee you I'd be the only one out there. Maybe like one person walking their dog. Um, but I imagine like you're at the beach in Barcelona, there's probably a lot of people out there doing their stuff.
I mean, everyone, yeah, there's people out on their morning run, walking their dogs, riding their bikes, walking their kids to school. Yeah, there's just a lot of life on the streets and activity. And that's one of the reasons I don't watch TV. It's like I just go outside and
Yeah,
there's
I know.
entertainment outside,
I
you know?
know, yeah. Dude, I feel that. I feel that for sure. Like, um, I'm just not good at like watching sports and like playing video games.
I get so bored.
Yeah. Like
So
there's
bored.
no like stakes here. There's no like visceral, like somatic experience here. I'm just sitting. But there's a time and place for that, but like just once in a while for me.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure.
Have you ever had like a powerful experience like with breath work? Like, is it just kind of like the standard Wim Hof stuff, or do you do more than that? More than that?
I mean, have you ever done breath work and taken mushrooms at the same time?
I have not, man. I've done them independently, and that was enough for me. I can't imagine blending them.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, that's really fun. So if you do like, if you mix it with, some psychedelics, that can be really fun. And if you do longer breathwork sessions, so a lot of times in my day to day, I just do, short 5, 10, 15 minute sessions just to get like an energy burst. Um, but if you have the time and you want to go a little bit deeper, there's a lot of recordings on YouTube that you can find like 45-minute, 1 hour long breathwork sessions. And the reason I like breathwork more than meditating is because I guess I'm just very type A and I like to be like feeling like I'm being productive and doing something. So I feel like with breathwork, you get the combination of meditating because you go off into this space, into your own thoughts and into your own zone. But then I also feel like the heavy breathing and the deep breathing is doing something to us, like doing something to our physiology. So that's why I prefer to focus more on specifically doing breath work as opposed to meditation.
Yeah, I think meditation is overrated. It's like a buzzword at this point.
Well,
Um, but I think the overlap between me and you and other internet creators and people who are, traveling around is we want to live like a non-boring life. We don't want to just do employment and watch TV and eat popcorn. Like creation is non-boring. Breath work and like the emotions you'll feel from that is the opposite of boring. So I think like to have a non-boring life, you don't need to do all this crazy shit like travel around and do adventure sports and stuff. Like you don't have to go to Bali and jump off a cliff into the ocean, right? you can you can like live a non-boring life just in your apartment doing breath work and like going on Zoom calls and doing like emotional workshops. Like that some of the craziest experiences of my life have been on Zoom calls. Um And I've done a lot of crazy shit from like flying helicopters to like alpine skiing and like breath work and like emotional activities have been as powerful, if not more powerful.
yeah, man, totally.
Like sitting around a fire, like playing music, like that kind of stuff is like it's like the opposite of watching television by yourself. Yeah.
I know. I really think we need more, now more than ever. We talked about before about, online friends and the power of online communities, but again, having that mix of both, like real friends you can hang out with and mess around with in person, and then also, those other friends who are maybe just not close friends, but more of like acquaintances.
Yeah, I think that like multiple people are recognizing that we need to move in the direction of like a hybrid, make friends online, but also get together in person. I'm curious, like when Paul went to Barcelona, were you guys able to like link up?
Yeah, a couple times. A couple times. That's Yeah, I really think that there's just this movement online to do more community-based things in general. Retreats have blown up in the past couple of years. I mean, people have been doing retreats for a long time, but I mean, now more than ever, I see more and more people hosting retreats and in-person group meetups. And so when Paul was here, he hosted a little get together at his place, which he's bigger on Twitter than I am, and most of the people at his place were Twitter people. But then I also hosted a Substack writers meetup, and Paul came to that as well, and we had about 6 or 7 other people there.
That's
So
great.
that was really cool. Yeah, the Substack writers meetup was fun.
Dude, I would have loved to do that. I think I'm gonna try and host one in the Boston area. And I got this idea last night where I was thinking about like doing another backpacking trip in the wilderness. And man, it's just so expensive. It was $2,900 for 3 days. And I'm like, man, like you're backpacking in the wilderness, like you're sleeping in a tent and like the food's not going to be like great. Like why is it I don't want to spend that much. I just want to like go out and disconnect from the world with some other people around me. It shouldn't be $3,000 for 9 days. So I was like, why don't I just invite a bunch of my internet friends? And like my grandmother actually owns a cottage on an island on the coast of Maine, and it's just empty all year round. I was like, I wonder if I could just use that building as like a free spot for internet
Nice.
writers to come. So
Is it like
it's in the work.
functional? Like, does it have running water and electricity and Wi-Fi?
Yeah, it has running water and electricity, and that's it. Like there's no internet, no TV. And it was built like my family built it in like 1895. So it's quite the place, man. It's very unique.
That's awesome. What, like your grandpa built it with his bare hands?
Dude, I don't know, like it's kind of a crazy story. So they lived in Boston and they would harvest ice from ponds in New England and they would sell the ice. They would pack it in sawdust on ships and send it down to the South where like there's no ice. They had no People don't understand there was no ice in the South anywhere. Like there's no ice cubes, you know? So this is
Yeah,
like a
yeah, yeah.
delicacy to have an ice cube before like the 1930s. So anyways, they made a fucking shit ton of money selling ice that they would basically get, for free. They just had to like pay to like harvest it and ship it. And so they made some money and then in Boston there's no AC and it would get disgusting in the summer. So they would get on a ship and go to Maine and they like found this island in Maine that was like owned by like a fisherman and they like bought it and then built this cottage.
That's
So,
hilarious. It
dude, it's
sounds like
still in
he
the
built it
family.
with his bare hands then.
Dude, they 100%. They just showed up, cut down the trees, and built the cottage. Times were different, man.
Oh,
So,
man.
yeah, I don't know, like how this is gonna play out, but I see no reason that we can't just all get together for 4 or 5 days and just only have like in person time where we can focus on writing, talking, walking, fasting. Um,
That's
And I
yeah,
feel like at this point, I'm in enough communities and I have enough like followers and I've done enough podcasts where I could probably gather 7 to 10 people to make this happen.
dude, 100%. Let me know. Let me know if you put it together. I'd love to join.
That sounds great. All right, Brian, thank you, man. I really appreciate you doing this.
Man, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the questions, really enjoyed the conversation. Um, I know we'll talk soon.
Yes, sir.